Hello and welcome. You're watching India Today Global and I'm Geeta Mohan. On a day when world leaders congratulated Ukraine on its 34th Independence Day, Russia said Ukrainian drones hit the Kursk nuclear power plant, damaging an auxiliary transformer and thereby reducing the operation capacity to 50%. Here is a report.
As Ukraine celebrated its 34th Independence Day on August 24, a day when they ceased to be a part of the erstwhile Soviet Union, Russians alleged that Ukrainian drones hit a nuclear plant, damaging an auxiliary transformer. The attack on the Kursk nuclear power plant has reduced the operation capacity to 50%. The fire at the plant was extinguished and no injuries have been reported. World leaders sent their greetings to Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky on Independence Day as Canadian Prime Minister Mark Carney visited Kiev. After recent summits in Alaska and Washington, D.C. respectively, where Vladimir Putin met President Trump and Zelensky along with European leaders rushed to the White House, voices have been growing regarding security guarantees. Europe has rallied behind Ukraine and demanded security guarantees, to which US has agreed to be a coordinator. Russia has, however, said the security guarantors should include members of the Security Council.
As regards the security guarantees for Ukraine, those principles proposed by Ukrainian delegation, I underline this once again, they provided for creation a group of guarantors. This group containing of permanent members of the Security Council, Russia, US, China, UK, and France. Plus, they mentioned Germany, Turkey, and any other country which would be interested to join this group of guarantors. And guarantors would be guaranteeing the security of Ukraine, which must be neutral, which must be non-aligned with any military bloc, and which must be non-nuclear.
Meanwhile, on the Independence Day, both Ukraine and Russia exchanged 146 prisoners of war.
There were a lot of men there. The important thing is that the older people, those who have gone through a lot, they understood what was going on. The young ones, they often gave up. The main goal of Russian authorities is to destroy us physically and morally, and they are quite successful. A lot of boys commit suicide, get traumatized. I do not want to talk about this on this holiday.
Russia-Ukraine war in its third year has seen both nations pounding each other. Last week, Russia fired a barrage of drones at Ukraine's Sumy region overnight, injuring over a dozen and destroying several houses. Russia had also launched 574 strike and decoy drones at Ukraine, as well as 40 missiles of various types targeting western regions of the country. Mahashweta Lala, Bureau Report, India Today.
Amid US-India strained ties due to tariff hikes and with additional tariff of 25% going into effect from the 27th of August, a very close aide of President Donald Trump has been nominated as the US envoy to India. Sergio Gor, head of White House Presidential Personnel Office, will fill the seat vacated by his predecessor and a Biden appointee, Eric Garcetti. Gore's association with Trump goes a long way. Gore was infamously called snake by former close associate of Trump and Tesla CEO Elon Musk. Musk called him a snake after Gore convinced the president that Musk ally Jared Isaacman was not a good choice for NASA administrator, showing details of Isaacman's donations to the Democrats. Musk also, in another post on X, attacked Gore for breaking the law because Gore didn't share his standard Form 86 or SF 86, which is required for background investigation for security clearances. Ahead of the 2024 presidential elections, Gore ran a political action committee supporting Trump. He also worked with Donald Trump Jr., president's eldest son. Gore, along with Trump Jr., had founded Winning Team Publishing, a conservative publishing house which published several books about Trump in the year 2021. Gore, 38 years of age, has also been appointed as Special Envoy for South Asia and Central Asian Affairs, and that's a very critical one. We'll talk about that. Trump, referring to Gore as a great friend, posted on his Truth Social that for the most populous region in the world, he needs a trustworthy person to deliver his agenda and make America great again. And to discuss this and more, I'm being joined by Ambassador Rajiv Dogra, former diplomat. Ambassador Dogra, thank you so much for joining me here. Now, this is a man who has an all-access card for President Trump. But can he make a difference when it comes to the differences between India and the United States of America? Can he bring the ties back on track?
Well, I hope Gore also considers this as an important assignment for him, because already at the age of 38, he's got positions which most dream of. I mean, there were, of course, exceptions like Clinton and Kennedy, who became presidents very young. Gore is certainly not in that category so far, but whatever he's achieved as the director of the administration of Trump's office, that's remarkable. But there is also an if, as there is in every situation. The if is that despite all the recommendations that he's got from Trump himself to Marco Rubio to Vance to many others, there is also one sore point that sticks out, and that was before his appointment, and that was from the biggest friend of Trump till about recently, Elon Musk. And he called him a snake. Now, that is a worrying part, because Elon Musk calling someone very close to Trump a snake is something to sit up and take notice of. So I hope that the speculation in India about Gore, that his appointment is for India, but at the same time, he's also been made Special Envoy to South Asia and Central Asia, has also caused a lot of remarks which are not all very supportive, especially with regard to the South Asia angle, because this has not happened before. And, one can say that, there are other ambassadors who are concretely accredited to Nepal, Pakistan, Bangladesh, and so on. But this is not concurrent accreditation. This is a position as a special envoy, which means also problems within American own administration, because no ambassador likes to be supervised by another ambassador. Second, there is also this new found love of Trump for Pakistan. And since Gore is close to Trump, there is a feeling that maybe it is that agenda that Trump has asked him to carry on.
But again, Ambassador Dogra, this is a very important part, the part where you talk about him being or heading the South Asia, Central Asia division. And that certainly in many ways, not many people are questioning whether that means Trump is hyphenating India-Pakistan yet again, because a lot of effort was made into de-hyphenation of India-Pakistan. Should he be taking care of this entire region, he will then be traveling to Pakistan, of course. And if he travels to Pakistan, who knows, he'd be traveling to POK as well.
Well, you made a very valid point. And, India-US relationship at the moment is not in the pink of health. So one option for India is to make it a point to say that, if you're sending an ambassador to India, very fine, but don't complicate the situation. So please make him ambassador to India, and maybe concurrent representation to some countries in Central Asia where America is not represented at ambassadorial level. But having him also as some kind of a super ambassador, a special envoy to Pakistan, would set up alarms in India, not just with the government, but also with other people in India, opposition parties, for example, and they would want to know why has India accepted such a hyphenation. So you're very right in saying that there is this danger that hyphenation could happen. And the second thing is that if someone comes with a sort of a mandate that please don't ignore Pakistan, then naturally the objectivity of being ambassador to India gets that much more diluted or affected by the other charge that he has been given. So I don't
Absolutely.
think from the American standpoint that was a very wise move. But do we take on America on this issue and let the relations dip further? Because there's always this choice that you do not accept his nomination.
Right,
So
but Ambassador Dogra,
that's a big if.
right, Ambassador Dogra, now because you've said what you've said, can India really afford to say no at this moment where on the one hand, India has to give an agreement, so we'll have to wait and see what New Delhi does. But on the other hand, this could be a moment where you have a man who has Trump's years. Although he might not be a clear advisor like others have been in the past and could be one who's come with orders to follow agenda, but he does have Trump's years.
Well, that's a very delicate balance. You put your finger on the crux of the matter. That can India say no? Well, as a sovereign country, you can say no to anything and everything. But that's not the point. Diplomacy demands that you find a solution which is a via media, which makes your point, gets your way, and yet does not take the situation further downhill. So maybe quietly, India could point out its reservations to the State Department in USA and say that please, can you solve this issue before it gets aggravated? If that does not work, then we have to sort of live with what we have been given in case we do not want to escalate this issue further, and hope that our persuasion and our way of handling the foreign diplomat would convince him that India's case needs to be heard sui generis on its own without bringing Pakistan into it. It will be a difficult task, but it has to be handled. And diplomats are known to handle difficult situations.
Right. As an aside, Ambassador Dogra, now if you look at his background and say that, okay, this could also be an opportunity to convince the White House, that New Delhi can convince the White House through Sergio Gor of why India has Russia on its side, why it is important to engage Russia.
Well, Sergio Gor, who was born in Uzbekistan, and he has the Russian sort of DNA, so to speak, in him. And Russia, as you know, from Soviet times onwards, has been a well-wisher and a friend of India. And Russia is the cause of all the trouble that is happening between India and USA at the moment, among other things. So I think there will be a soft corner in Sergio Gor's DNA vis-a-vis India. So that is a positive. The second positive is that someone who's climbed up the ladder so fast and so well means that he's not going to rush in and spoil the relationship further. On the other hand, perhaps you may think it is his chance to prove to the world that even at this young age, he is able to get the relationship back on the even keel as it should be. So I think it is a test as much for Gore as it is for Indian diplomacy to convince him to, look at things from the Indian perspective.
Right. Ambassador Dogra, thank you so much for joining us with this perspective. Important to understand the man who, in all probability, will be the next ambassador of the United States of America to India. Now, shifting focus, the United States has officially declared Balochistan Liberation Army and its suicide wing, the Majid Brigade, as a foreign terrorist organization. This puts the BLA in the same category as Al-Qaeda and ISIS. But why now?
Pro-migrant
The United States has officially designated the Balochistan Liberation Army or BLA and its suicide wing, the Majid Brigade, as a foreign terrorist organization. This move carries far more weight than previous sanctions, essentially putting the BLA in the same league as Al-Qaeda, ISIS and Lashkar-e-Taiba. So why now? The timing is no coincidence. It comes against a dense geopolitical backdrop where three major dynamics collide. First, the fragility of China's multi-billion-dollar China-Pakistan economic corridor. The BLA has long targeted highways, railways, pipelines, and even Chinese nationals working on these projects. From the 2018 attack on the Chinese consulate in Karachi, to the Pearl Continental Hotel raid in Gwadar, to suicide blast near Karachi's Confucius Institute, BLA's campaign has left at least 21 Chinese workers dead. CPEC is very much in their crosshairs. Second, a potential reset in US-Pakistan counter-terrorism cooperation. The designation follows fresh counter-terrorism talks in Islamabad, signaling that Washington is willing to engage Pakistan's military once again, reminiscent of the war on terror years. For Islamabad, this brings not just intelligence sharing, but also international legitimacy against the insurgency it often paints as foreign-backed. And third, the great power game, Washington's rivalry with Beijing. By criminalizing the BLA's networks abroad, the US indirectly shields Chinese investments in Pakistan while keeping Pakistan's generals close. But at the same time, Washington carefully avoids endorsing Pakistan's claims about Indian involvement, keeping security cooperation with Islamabad separate from its strategic ties with New Delhi. What's the bigger picture? The BLA is not just a local insurgency anymore. It has evolved urban attacks, suicide bombings, targeting economic arteries, posing a direct challenge to Pakistan's stability and China's interest. For the US, labeling them as terrorists won't end the insurgency overnight. But it does send a powerful signal. Washington wants to balance fighting terror, managing Pakistan, and navigating its long game against China, all without burning bridges with India. In the end, this designation is more symbolic than transformative. But it shines a spotlight on one of South Asia's most dangerous flashpoints, where local insurgency, global powers, and economic mega projects all collide. Vishaurik Shaha, Bureau Report, India Today Global.
The UK government faces a major challenge as a court ruling has directed a hotel in London suburbs to evict asylum seekers. The ruling has spurred protests across major cities in the UK between pro-migrant and anti-migrant protesters. This comes at a time when the Keir Starmer government is taking measures to curb unauthorized migration.
Pro-migrant supporters clashed with anti-migrant protesters following a court order in which a hotel in a London suburb will have to evict asylum seekers. Several protests took place in various cities, including Bristol and Liverpool. The ruling comes at a time when the UK government is trying to curb unauthorized migration while trying to accommodate those who are seeking refuge. With immigration being the top concern, British Prime Minister Keir Starmer's Labour government has been under pressure to deliver on its pledge to end hotel use, which is costing billions of pounds a year. Britain has seen regular protests in recent weeks outside hotels. housing asylum seekers, spurred in part by concerns about public safety after a migrant who was accommodated in a hotel east of London was charged with sexual assault. On Sunday, the government said it would reform its asylum appeals process to accelerate decisions, reduce a backlog of cases, and phase out the use of hotels to house asylum seekers. Under the plan, an independent body of adjudicators would be created to handle asylum appeals and reduce the backlog. 106,000 cases, including 51,000 appeals, with average wait times exceeding a year. With Mahashweta Lala, Bureau Report, India Today.
That's all in this edition of India Today Global. But before I go, here's my take on how China is expanding its military bases across the world, but not just militarily. They're doing it in a different way. Here's an excerpt. If you want to watch the whole video, log on to India Today Global's YouTube channel. Thank you for watching. Goodbye and take care. China is reshaping the very fabric of global power, and it's all happening at the world's busiest ports. Think of it as a game of monopoly. China's not just buying properties anymore, they're buying influence, one port at a time. Now here's where it gets interesting. This expansion represents a dramatic departure from China's historical focus on regional concerns, positioning Beijing as a potential challenger to established powers in the global arena. It's rather like watching your quiet neighbor suddenly start throwing parties every weekend. You begin to wonder what they're really up to. Hello and welcome. You're watching Statecraft with me, Geeta Mohan. Now, China's emergence as a global economic powerhouse has fundamentally reshaped international maritime dynamics and strategic competition. As the world's largest trading nation conducting 95% of its international trade through sea lanes, China has systematically leveraged its economic might to establish a growing network of strategic ports and bases worldwide. Unlike the United States of America, which maintains over 128 overseas military bases across 51 countries with nearly 170,000 deployed personnel at an annual cost of $30 to $50 billion, China's approach combines commercial port investments with selective military installations. The Americans have gone for the traditional approach. Think of it as the military equivalent of a full English breakfast, hearty, obvious, and everywhere you look. China, meanwhile, has opted for something more like dim sum, smaller portions but far more sophisticated, and you're not entirely sure what you're eating until it's too late. Enter President Xi Jinping in 2013 with what might be the most ambitious infrastructure project since the Romans decided to build roads everywhere, the Belt and Road Initiative, or as we like to call it, Xi's global shopping spree. President Xi Jinping's launch of the Belt and Road Initiative in 2013 marked a pivotal moment in China's global strategy. The accompanying 21st century maritime Silk Road, connecting China to Europe and the Arctic Ocean via the South China Sea and Indian Ocean, has supercharged China's overseas port investment activities. This initiative has yielded remarkable results. As of September 2023, China had signed 70 bilateral and regional shipping agreements with 66 countries and regions, creating shipping routes and service networks covering major countries and regions worldwide. Shanghai has retained its position as the world's busiest container port for 13 consecutive years. That's longer than some governments have stayed in power. Meanwhile, several Chinese ports rank amongst the most connected. Now let's talk about Djibouti, a country most people couldn't find on a map if their lives depended on it, but which has become absolutely crucial to China's global strategy. China's most significant overseas military installation is located at Djibouti's Doraleh port. Established in 2017 to support the BLA's naval anti-piracy missions in the Gulf of Aden. These operations have continued non-stop since 2008, providing China with legitimate justification for maintaining a permanent military presence in this strategically vital location. US intelligence agencies have identified numerous locations where China is reportedly considering establishing military facilities. The Office of the Director of National Intelligence's annual assessment highlighted China's pursuit of overseas military installations and access agreements in an attempt to project power and protect China's interests abroad. The potential locations read like a world traveler's bucket list: Burma or Myanmar, Cuba, Equatorial Guinea, Pakistan, Seychelles, Sri Lanka, Tajikistan, Tanzania, and the United Arab Emirates. A comprehensive study by the RAND Corporation ranked over 100 potential candidates based on desirability and feasibility. The study identified Bangladesh, Cambodia, Myanmar, and Pakistan as most likely to meet Beijing's requirements for future military facilities. Analysis by the Center for Strategic and International Studies concluded that China is most likely operating covert listening stations at 4 sites in Cuba, including 3 near Havana and 1 located just 64 kilometers west of US Naval Station Guantanamo Bay. These facilities would provide China with unprecedented intelligence gathering capabilities in America's strategic backyard, which must be keeping quite a few people in Washington, D.C. awake at night. Looking ahead, China's pursuit of overseas military installations faces similar challenges to those confronted by established powers. Host nations retain ultimate sovereignty over their territory and can restrict or revoke access agreements, particularly following government changes. It's like being a tenant. No matter how much you've invested in the property, the landlord can still ask you to leave. In other words, the world is about to become a much more interesting place, though whether that's good or bad news rather depends on where you're sitting. One thing's for certain, the age of simple geopolitics is well and truly over.